Is Gen Z ready for the workplace? Let's talk about it. By the way, I'm KJ Miller. I am a founder, lecturer, and content creator. I love talking about all things business and pop culture. If you like any of that, be sure to subscribe. Now let's get into it. Okay, so over on TikTok a few days ago, I made a video where I asked, am I the a-hole because I fired my assistant after 3 weeks? Some things to know. This was years ago. This was in 2018 or maybe 2019, I believe. Also, this was my first assistant ever. I would go on from there to have 3 other assistants, all of whom were much better. And I was also a much better manager to all of them. And they also just were much better. But my first assistant I ever had, again, back in, I think it was 2018 or 2019, she only lasted 3 weeks before I had to let her go. And so in this TikTok video, which I will link below, I explained sort of like the big 3 things that caused her to be fired after 3 weeks. And then I asked, so am I the a-hole? And people had a lot of opinions. And what I'd like to do in this video is not necessarily just rehash that, because you can watch the video, you can read people's comments, but an idea that was put forth a lot in the comment section, and one that I'd like to kind of explore in this video, is how much do we as managers owe to first-time employees? Because this particular person, this was her first corporate job. It was not her first job ever, but it was her first corporate job. And by that, I mean like a job where you're coming into an office 5 days a week. Like, it was her first corporate job. And there was a lot that I sort of assumed people just know that it seems like she did not know. And so since then, I have definitely gotten better about not assuming, about making my expectations very, very clear. But I do think it is interesting to ask the question, how prepared is Gen Z for the workforce, and how much do managers, not just me, but managers more broadly, owe when it comes to training certain things into these new people coming into the workforce? And is Gen Z at a disadvantage for whatever reason coming into the workforce because they're not learning some of the skills that maybe millennials and Gen Xers and boomers learned? So I kind of want to explore all of that in this video, and get your take as well in the comments. So because I'm not going to force you to go watch the video, I'll give you a quick recap here of the 3 major reasons why I eventually let this person go. Reason number 1, in her first week of employment, she just neglected to come to work for several hours and didn't call or text to tell me why. I had to reach out to her, at which point she let me know, oh, I'm still at home because I'm waiting for my mom who got locked out, and now she's coming home from her night shift and she's not gonna have a way to get in if I don't stay here and wait for her. Okay, so that's a perfectly legitimate reason why maybe you need to come in late to work, because you don't want your mom to be locked out of your home. There's no real reason why you wouldn't have communicated that to me, right? I would think whether you've worked in an office job or not, you would understand, if I'm not going to be someplace on time, I should communicate that. Now, the pushback I got in the comments was that I hadn't set the expectation of what time to be at work clearly enough, because the way I phrased it in the video, and the way I think I recall phrasing it at the time, was I'm usually in the office between 9:30 and 10. That's when you should get there as well. And according to the commenters, that makes it sound more like a suggestion than a requirement. And so since I wasn't clear about when I'm here, you're here, it would make sense that maybe she didn't understand that she needed to call or text. Okay, I'm going to push back on that a little bit, because I know myself. Again, this happened many, many years ago, but I think I know myself well enough to know what I didn't say was, generally I'm here at this time, so you do what you feel, but if you could maybe possibly try to be here around this time. That's just not how I would have phrased it. I would have phrased it, the start time for work is between 9:30 and 10. You should be here around that time because that's when I'm here, right? So to me, am I giving you a little leeway? Sure. If I say I'm here between 9:30 and 10, that's when you should get here, that's the leeway. The leeway is between 9:30 and 10, right? The leeway is not, because I think by the time I reached out to her, it was going on 11 a.m. I just don't know how someone could hear what I said and get that. But again, a lot of the sentiment in the comment section was, no, you gave her a time suggestion. You didn't give her a time requirement. And this is her first real job. So you should have been clear at setting expectations. So that gets me to point number one. When it comes to what do we owe Gen Z, and is Gen Z prepped for work? And obviously this is just one example. I've worked with many, many, many Gen Zers, none of whom seem to have a problem understanding that like being at work isn't optional. But I will take the point and I will say I have since that experience become very clear about my expectations. And that's on, you can talk to anyone who has worked for me in the last 4 or 5 years and ask them, is KJ unclear about what she wants? And I'm almost certain they would all say no. Do I maybe sometimes set expectations too high? I could believe someone might give me that feedback, like maybe KJ expects too much. But the feedback I'm not getting is I don't know what she wants for me, because I have learned to be very, very clear. But in this particular instance, I do think, and maybe some Gen Zers in the comments can let me know, I don't think anyone in my generation would have been confused by that. Without anything else being spelled out, I think if anyone in my generation started a job and the person said, I'm usually here around this time, that's when you should be here too, they would take that as okay, I need to get to work between 9:30 and 10. And if I can't be there for some reason at that time, I need to communicate that. I think my generation and the generations above me, that's what they would expect. That's what they would hear. That's how they would act. And so the fact that that's not how this person took it, it is one of the things that makes me wonder, is there something that we got, some kind of like inherent training that we got that Gen Z didn't get? And I will say now that so much of Gen Z, because by the way, I did look up how old is Gen Z right now. And according to the Google AI overlords, the youngest Gen Zers are 13, the oldest are 28. So the people entering the workforce even now still are Gen Z. And a lot of Gen Zers entered the workforce during the pandemic. So I do think now this story that I'm telling you about my assistant was pre-pandemic, but she also was Gen Z. But I will say, I do think if you entered the workforce during the pandemic and your first job was a remote job or even a hybrid job, maybe there are some things that always came more naturally to us that don't come as naturally to Gen Z, and maybe kind of those stricter time expectations, maybe that's one of them. What I will say is my takeaway from this situation, one of my biggest takeaways from this situation in general, was to be more explicit and to be more clear. But I still feel as though I was pretty clear. I don't think, just knowing myself, I don't think I would have said it in such a way where it would feel like a blase. Get here, when you get here. Just knowing me, I don't think so. But, point taken, would love to know your thoughts on that, and how strict you think someone needs to be. And if you think Gen Z, when it comes to things like that, like when to show up in the office, if they're at like a disadvantage in any way. Okay, that brings me to point number 2. Now, this one was the most controversial. I got the most pushback on this one, and I take it. So she happened to join the week before we were going on our annual company retreat. And our retreat was something that we did for our employees. We had a very small team. As a thank you, we would take them somewhere. We had taken them to Napa Valley. This particular one was like a ski trip, and it was, lodging paid for, travel paid for, and you get to bring a +1. A lot of people brought their significant other. Some people just, would bring a friend. And it was meant to be a thank you. We did not spend the weekend working. It was, it wasn't a work event. It was a let's go have fun, you go have fun event. Okay. And everyone got to bring a +1. Now, my assistant, I had not invited her to bring a +1 because, again, I was thinking about this as a treat, as a reward for all of the hard work that the team has done. That's really how we thought about the retreat. And we had collected RSVPs from everyone and their +1. She didn't have an RSVP on the list. And I'm assuming she didn't have an RSVP on the list because she knew I had not told her she could bring a +1. Okay, well, the day comes where we're all getting to the office and loading up in the rental cars. She has a +1. Has said nothing about this person, has not put this person on the RSVP list. So I'm quite confused. And she's like, oh, well, everyone else got a +1, so I thought I did. And so this is one where, again, the comments, a lot of people were like, if you didn't explicitly say you can't bring a +1, I wouldn't have known that I couldn't. And I think that that's very fair, and I take that feedback. But I will say, to me, the little bit of pushback I'd give, and again, I'm taking the feedback. The little bit of pushback I'd give is, if you thought it was fine and everybody got a +1, why wouldn't your +1 be on the sheet? My +1 was on the sheet. My husband's name was on the sheet. So like, why wouldn't your +1 be on the sheet if you thought it was fine? Like, why just show up with her? However, I take the feedback. And there were also a lot of people in the comment section effectively saying, like, if she doesn't get to bring one, then it's almost like you're treating her like she's not a real team member. And even though she's just been there for a week, it's like, is she on the team or is she not on the team? And I take that feedback as well. We ended up, that was actually, I think, the last retreat we ever did. Did we do another retreat past that? Because I think the next year was the pandemic. So this must have been 2019. Anyway, the point is, feedback taken. But again, I feel like someone in my generation would have clarified, right? Like, particularly because an assistant role in every business I've ever worked in, there have always been assistants, and assistants were treated more like admin, less like core team members. So there was an understanding that, like, when the core team is doing certain things, that's happening with the core team. Admin is over here handling, managing, overseeing, helping with logistics, whatever it might be. But they were thought about differently, again, in the jobs that I've had. I've worked in, big companies where there are tons of assistants, executive assistants, admin folks. And this is a much smaller company. This was my startup, but I sort of had that mindset of, there's core team and there's support team and there's certain things that we do all together, but there are also plenty of things that are happening separately or differently. So that is, I guess, training that I've got or norms that have been established for me that maybe haven't been established for Gen Z, particularly Gen Z team members who are coming of age and coming into the workplace in the post-pandemic sort of like remote work, hybrid work world. Maybe this is another one of those things where I made an assumption based on what I had seen, and I shouldn't have made that assumption. I totally take that feedback. Again, one of my biggest takeaways from this was just like, I need to be clearer. But I do still think to not communicate that I'm bringing this person, to just sort of like show up with them, is both confusing and unprofessional. And there is just sort of like an underlying situation here, which is the entire point of hiring an assistant is to make your job easier, right? To take some of the burden off of you, the burden of planning and scheduling and calendaring and all of these things. So if it feels like instead what you're doing is constantly having to figure out how to mitigate the things they're doing, almost the role starts to not make any sense, right? So that I do sort of also have that in the back of my mind, like, okay, this is feeling like more work, not less work, which we'll get more into it towards the end of the video. But okay, I take that one. Let's say I take that one, right? Like, yes, she should have communicated it. Yes, she should have put her homegirl's name on the list, but I should have been explicit about, like, the expectation is you're not bringing a +1, and certainly not by surprise, because what if we didn't have enough beds? Like, just the logistics of it. Like, what if there wasn't enough room in these rental cars? Anyway, I digress. On to point number 3. Point number 3 was, I had told her both before the retreat and when we got to the retreat, my expectation was that she was going to help at the retreat. Help with, organizing, help with decorating, because we like decorate the house when we get there. We like it to be nice for the employees, and we put people's names on the rooms and stuff like that. And we also always hand out like little gifts or little awards. So help with getting all of that organized, help with, ordering dinner to come to the house. I was like, there are going to be a lot of admin tasks happening throughout the weekend. My expectation is that you're helping with those. She's like, cool, cool, cool. She gets it. We get to the retreat. Nothing. She's not helping with anything. She's not lifting a finger. She's not helping decorate when we need to get the food. I'm like, where's she go? You know, it's just me and my co-founder like, oh, I guess we'll get the food. I guess we'll set up the food. I guess we'll clean up the food. I guess we'll call and make sure that the XYZ place that we were supposed to go for this activity is still available, because literally she just kept leaving. I kept looking up and being like, where did she go? She's on the slope. She's kicking it. She's having a good time. But ma'am, this is another one where I got pushback because people were like, well, you should have been clear about what you wanted her to do. And I was like, no, see, now that one I'm not going to take. I'm not going to take, because I was clear. I was clear about the things that I knew would need to happen, like decorating, cleanup, organizing, helping with the awards and gifts and things. But then I also said, and there will be things that come up throughout the week. And so just make sure you're available, because I didn't know everything I would need help on. I knew the things I did know, and I knew that there would be things that would come up, and I knew I would need her to generally be available. And she was gone. Okay. And it sort of was like, again, if I think about it from a Gen Z perspective, she's like, oh, I'm in the mountains. I'm here. I'm kicking it. Everybody else is kicking it. So I'm kicking it too. And I just can't imagine me or anyone else in my generation. Like if I had been told, hey, when we get there, your job is to help. Here are some of the things you'll need to do, and also make sure you're available. I would make myself available. I would be, glued to the hip of my boss asking, what else can I do? Do you need help with this? Should I go get that? Should I run over here? Can I go clean this? Like if I was told that's what my job was to do for the weekend, that is what I would do for the weekend. And do you know how I know? Because my last job before I started Minted was at Deloitte. And Deloitte is big on, I don't know if they still are, but at the time when I was there as a management consultant for 2 years. At the time that I was there was very much an expectation that you weren't just involved in your work, you were involved in all of the special interest groups, also nonprofit initiatives that we had going on. It was an expectation, and they spoke about it during your performance reviews and when bonuses were going out. All of that, it mattered. It was not just, are you here doing your work? Are you here doing this other stuff, this extra stuff? So I was a part of this group that was kind of a retail focus group, because I was my industry that I focus on was retail. And so we would host these events throughout the year, focus on other people in the retail practice. And I remember one of these events, I had flown to whatever city it was, call it Atlanta, and I was on the planning committee. And I spent the whole time, mind you, I'm also a part of the group, right? So I'm on the planning committee for whatever the activity is that we're doing. So yes, I get to be involved in activity, but because I had also been asked to help plan, help, organize, I was the whole time up, because the partner who was the head person, up under her. Okay. Christina, her name was Christina. Christina, can I do this? Christina, can I do that? Oh, Christina, I just grabbed this, the whole time, because I understood that's part of my job at this moment. Even though I too am a part of this little retail focused organization, and I'm at the activity as well that we all flew out here as well, and I'm getting to do the things that we're getting to do. I'm not just getting to be a part of it, I'm also helping plan it. And so the expectation is that I am on top of things, right? And no one had to give me extra they didn't have to give me extra instruction for me to understand that that was my job. And so I don't know if that is a generational thing. If I kind of feel like anyone that I know in my shoes in my generation would think about it the way I would think about it, but maybe it is a generational thing. In her mind, she's like, well, I'm here now. I'm up in the mountains now. So whatever happens, happens. I don't know. I don't know if it's generational or if it was truly just a her thing. But yeah, I got some pushback on that in the comments as well, basically saying oh, you should have been clearer about exactly what you wanted. And also a few people who were like, Anne, why does she have to work if no one else has to work? Because she's an assistant. She's an assistant. Her job is to assist. I'm working too, mind you. I'm putting on the retreat. I'm working too. Anyway. now you have the gist. You've got the gist of the video. I want to now dive in a little bit more to this idea of what do we owe new employees, and specifically what do we owe Gen Z who's coming into workforces new and potentially with less experience or less context because they might be coming into a remote job or a hybrid job, so they're not getting as much of the face-to-face time as earlier generations have gotten. So what do we owe to them in terms of training? And I will say, like I've mentioned now multiple times in this video, one thing I've decided that I owe anyone who comes and works for me is clarity. I deeply, deeply dislike when things aren't clear. When you don't know what's expected of you, you don't know when it's supposed to be done by, you don't know if there's a certain framework I'm looking for it, or if the work or some spreadsheet or some model already exists that you can tap into, and I'm thinking it needs to look like that, but I haven't communicated that to you. I owe anyone who works for me clarity. And I think that that is true for any new person who joins an organization. So whether I have someone joining who's very junior in a coordinator role, or whether I have someone who's joining who's very senior and call it a director or VP role, I still am extremely clear. Now, if you are a director or VP, I don't feel like I have to lay things out at the exact same level of detail as I do for a coordinator. Nevertheless, I'm going to be very, very clear. And I do think that is something that we all owe Gen Z, and we all owe new team members, because it is very frustrating when you know someone wants something of you, but it's not clear what they want. So that is one thing that I absolutely believe we all owe Gen Z and we owe new employees is clarity. Another thing that I do think we owe new employees is feedback, and feedback that is meant to make the person better. One thing I always say, though, about feedback is that it's got to include expectations on when and how that behavior or that action will improve. So if I give you feedback and I say, let's say you've done some task for me, maybe you've built a model for me, and the model is, I actually had this situation happen maybe a couple months ago. The model is not modeling. By that I mean, some people, they don't really know how to use Excel, and so they use it kind of more to just plug numbers into a sheet. But the numbers that I'm looking at, there are no formulas, there are no scenarios set up such that I could change one of your assumptions and it would spit out something else, right? That's a model. A model involves assumptions and scenarios, and if you update the assumptions, it spits out a different number, so that I can kind of play around in it, and also so that I can understand your assumptions and tweak them if I'm oh, that's actually not an assumption I would make, right? That's how you actually build a model. What a lot of people never get trained in that. And so they just use Excel as a place to put numbers into a sheet. And so someone had essentially done that, right? I had asked them for an analysis on how much inventory we should order. And they essentially just put their thoughts, I think we should order 1,000 of this and 2,000 of that and 1,500 of this. And I'm well, why? And they're oh, well, I thought about it and I looked at how many we sold last week. And I'm yeah, but that thinking you're doing, I need to see that thinking in the spreadsheet. So I took an hour of my day to build out the formulas, even though, mind you, we have other spreadsheets where I have done this before. This person could have looked and tried to model out their spreadsheet to one of the many, many models I have built. Never mind. I spent an hour and said, here's how I would do it. I need to see how many have we sold. What is our average weekly demand? Then what is our inventory? Then based on that, you spit out the number of how much you think we should order, right? And then I can follow along and I can say, oh, actually this assumption I would change. And when I say feedback needs to come with expectations, I said, I would like you to update the rest of the model, because I did maybe a few rows, and get it back to me by X date. And going forward, whenever I ask you for any sort of model, this is what I'm expecting. I need to be able to see your work. I need to be able to see your assumptions. There for damn sure need to be formulas. I didn't say for damn sure, but I made it clear there need to be formulas that I can look at, right? Going forward, this is what I'm expecting to see. So it's not just this model fell short. This is not what I wanted to see. It's here's what it needs to be going forward and by when, right? So I do think we owe new employees very explicit feedback actionable feedback that comes with deadlines, so that it's clear what you want and when you want it by. I oftentimes will see other managers give feedback that's just sort of like, this isn't good enough. Redo this. And then it's hard for someone to learn from that or to know exactly what the takeaway should be. So I do try very hard not to give generic, vague feedback, to give very explicit feedback and to make it clear when I'm expecting to see the improvement by. The final thing I'll say that I do think we owe new employees is growth opportunities. So all of my assistants post this first one who came and worked for me, they got promoted. And actually got promoted more than once. So got promoted from assistant to a coordinator role, from a coordinator to a manager role, because while they were in the position, I was very adamant and very intentional about giving them opportunities to take on more, to show that they could do more so that they could get the promotion, right? Because I think, are there some people who like want to be an assistant forever? Yes, I'm sure there are. It's great work if that's what you want to do. Most people, at least the ones that I've worked with who've come in as assistants, they've come in somewhat young, and this is kind of like a first job or, a first opportunity for them, but that's not what they want to be forever. And I'd have that conversation early. What is it that you're interested in? Are there other departments within Minted that you're interested in? It just so happened my last two were both interested in marketing. And I said, okay, so I'm going to make sure that we are giving you, along with the work that you're doing over here, some marketing opportunities so that we can slowly get you ready for that transition, right? And they were grateful for that. Now, some people might say, oh, that means you're just giving them extra work and that's not fair to them. And I got to tell you, I don't know how you can transition into another part of your career without doing both the work that you're currently doing and the work that you want to be doing at the same time. I don't know how that's possible. I think if you want to be doing a different type of work, someone has to know that you can do that type of work, right? Like maybe big companies can afford to just say like, oh, sure, we'll move you over here. You don't have any training in it. So we'll spend the first month just training you in that thing. And for that month, you won't really be helping us. We'll just be helping you, but it'll be worth it for us. Like maybe there are big companies that can do that. Startups cannot. So if you come into the fold as an assistant, but what you want to do is marketing, you're going to be working as an assistant while you slowly learn how to also do the marketing tasks you need to do. Yeah, it means it's more work. That is what it means, but it's work that's helping you get into the career you want. I think that is something that we owe new employees, to give them growth opportunities. Some people might push back and say like, oh, that's just more work. I think it's the work that helps someone get to where they want to go, and that's why I do it, truly. So anyway, those are my thoughts. Hopefully you were able to follow that in typical KJ fashion. I made a lot of different points. We took a few tangents. Hopefully you get what I'm saying. I'd love to know if you agree, if you disagree. What do you disagree with? What did I do wrong? What can I be doing better? Please keep it cute and respectful in the comments, but I am always happy to hear what you guys are thinking. And as always, if you love this sort of content, be sure to subscribe. I'll see you next time.